You're live.
Hey y'all, welcome to Slow News Day Live. My name is Steve Poikinen. I am damn near on the beach. You can't tell because webcams are shit outdoors. But we left the splendor of Humboldt County yesterday.
Hey
drove
y'all,
welcome to Slow News Day
Oh my-
Live. My name is Steve Poikinen.
Josh,
I am
you should mute
damn.
that.
Thank you. There we go. I'm not going to threaten my
My
tech
bad.
guy today because he does wonderful work for me. But yeah, we're down towards like the Big Sur area. Totally fucking different. It was like 103 degrees in the middle of the day when we left yesterday. Now I'm in a sweatshirt at 10 o'clock in the morning, a little bit chilly. At any rate, let's do some show and let's bring in today's guest. I am very fortunate to be joined by the clone of Ryan Christian, who is also known as the Last American Vagabond. I'm actually not sure if I'm talking to Ryan or imposter Ryan, so we're gonna have to figure that out. Whoever you are, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good, Steve. Thanks for having me on, man.
Dude, what the fuck?
Yeah,
what happened?
it's an incredible situation. I mean, and as more I dig into this, I'm finding out that this is something that's been happening a lot very recently with a lot of people, and as far as I can tell, on all sides of the fake two-party paradigm, right? I mean, I even saw that some SGT report is getting the same attacks under impersonation, and I even reached out because of that, and I was like, look, I know we probably disagree on damn near everything, but I find it interesting that we're both getting hit with this weird accusation, and ultimately, what YouTube is doing is accusing. And I'll just speak about my situation because I don't know the ins and outs of everybody else, but that I'm being accused of impersonating myself twice now. And they're literally saying impersonation. And when you go and look at it, it's pretty cut and dry. I mean, there's only two ways to do it. Either you're putting up a video pretending to be another channel, or you're copying a person's channel title and presentation, neither of which I'm even coming close to doing. It's all my setup. It's all the same. And so they use that to attack my channel. But the way it started was they actually pulled up an old warning, which for those that know YouTube, you have to have a warning to get these strikes. So there was no warnings. And I find it interesting that they have to manufacture these things, which suggests they don't even have avenues to go after me legitimately using their fake news tools and whatever else. But they had to pull up this old warning that I'd already appealed and they'd already ruled on. Talk about dishonesty, right? So they just drag it back up so they can give me a strike. And they give me a strike claiming I was impersonating my channel on August 10th. I appealed that. Nothing happened. It's just a joke, right? At this point, I'm still able to stream. I was frustrated. But then I got the one, it was day before yesterday. Midstream, I was live on the show and they cut it right in the middle of the show, which is crazy. In the middle of talking about some very important things, all completely sourced material. And of course they can't, this is my point I keep making. If they have 1,000 tools now to be like, you're fake news or you're inciting hatred or you're doing this or that, they have those tools that they claim are legitimate. So why wouldn't they use them if they claim I'm spreading fake news or challenging the World Health Organization? No, they have to claim I'm impersonating myself, which I believe shows you that they don't have the standing that they pretend they do because we're using sourced material or so on. I mean, they could just blatantly lie if they want to, but the fact that they went that route. Now, the point being, I reached out, you and a lot of different people showed some support, and YouTube, for whatever reason, responded, acting like, oh, well, we'll get back to you when it's COVID-19. It could be a long time. One of my mods reached out and said, funnily, humorously enough, oh, so it takes you a long time to respond to the appeals, but yet you can jump in midstream and cut something happening while it's live. Like, come on,
Right.
Long story short, because of the response and everything that happened, they pulled back the most recent strike. So now I was able to go live yesterday, but left the other one, the older one, still about impersonation. So they pull one back claiming that, so clearly showing that they at least claim they admit they can see that they were wrong, yet left the other one. Anyway, it's just, this is happening all across YouTube right now, multiple channels. I personally think it's about 2020 and COVID-19, which I think are aggressively tied into one another. And they just they want to be able to have that trigger like mid show, getting reach, whatever else. It's pretty wild.
So I mean, this is Slow News Day. I've been saying we live in a fucking cartoon for a couple of years now. But man, I mean, the ability to silence your voice while you're in the middle of a broadcast is something that should have the entirety of not even just independent media, but even establishment media going, wait a minute, that seems a bit off. Like there really is. There's no process to it. The process is we're going to cut you off. We're going to take away your ability to communicate. We're going to silence your voice. Not because you violated any rules, but because of the content that you're producing. And they can't come flat out and say that. Even though they could label it harmful content like they did with Jason Burmis when they demonetized his channel, even though Jason has never received a strike or a warning or anything. They did pull one of his videos. The only video of his that they pulled before they demonetized him was a clip of Louis Gomer saying the name of the whistleblower that nobody's allowed to say. It's Erica Caramello. But like it's just, at the same time, it's as comical as it is nightmarish, because we were talking before we went live. I mean, this is your work. This is your job. This is also your art. It's also where your passion goes. And it's like having a piece of you forcibly removed without anyone putting you under, to be able to just have the arbitrary authority to yank your life's work.
Yeah. We need to see this as the evolution. I mean, it's a perfect kind of microcosm, comparison to what's happening right now with everything else, the way this evolved. Remember how it started? I mean, not even that long ago, when you talked about YouTube censoring, oh, you're so crazy. Oh, what a conspiracy theorist. Like that didn't happen. Like, oh, if they did it, there must have been a reason, sort of like the way with police and anything else, right? It's this kind of normalization, the equivocation based on their obviously wrong actions, and how it evolved. And then it became, oh, well, now, yes, we are doing that, but here's the reason, right? Oh, but wait a minute, you just said they weren't doing it. And now you see, and that happens today too with everything else. But now we're getting to the point to where, I mean, it's across the board. It's become normalized. Like we are outright censoring because they say things are, they're deciding. Like they're the arbiters, they're the publishers. And yet, we can look back, and it wasn't that long ago where that was something that was just asinine ridiculous. Same thing with all the stuff that's going on. No one's going to make you wear a mask. No one's going to force you to lock down, and we see that evolution, and it's the same kind of psychological manipulation. And I think it's a lot of people that know it's fake and push it because of some whatever incentive, they're incentivized for whatever reason, politics, or just people that are lost. And these are the blue check marks, the social media influencers that are out there screaming you down for saying anything that you don't like. But then a week later, it gets rationalized by New York Times, and suddenly they talk about it too, and it's okay. But you were still fake back then. Yeah. And this is this whole evolution of all this. Think about how YouTube was demonetizing people this whole time under the guise that it's, dangerous content, to use your example of Jason Byrne. We got the same thing. But
no, so did we. I mean, we're still like partially monetized here, but I don't mean to cut you off. But like every video that goes up, I have to manually appeal.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's where we were at before they pulled the full plug and they removed memberships and all that, which is probably your next step. That's the evolution of this. But think about how crazy it is that they're demonetizing your videos before. I mean, at least this was my experience before I even went live. Right. So that's always been the clear-cut case to show you it's about people, content, not about actual, or not even about content, that they're targeting you. They're saying, we think you are a problem, so we're going to demonetize. I did this, an experiment. You can title your video Puppy Dogs and Ice Cream, and it will be demonetized because they've chosen you, which is in violation of their own rules. But see, this is the point. We should all be aware that we've always been doing this, and they're doing it overtly right now. And there's really no way you can be okay with that. It's the same kind of idea of censoring people you disagree with and pretending like you still support free speech. We all need to get past this today. It's pretty alarming. But I know how people are tired of censorship talk, even though it's incredibly relevant to where we are.
I'm a free press and free speech activist, so people are usually tired of me talking about it. But it's one of those things where they can it's not just predictive programming, where it's they show, you know, people who have different viewpoints and then paint them as like bad or wrong or harmful actors. But there's a cultural conditioning, like you were alluding to here, where you get blue check people screaming down somebody, or TV celebrities talking up something, and people become conditioned to automatically agreeing with it, whether it's censorship, whether it's wearing a mask. Right here where I'm at, this is like a kind of a conference center and retreat area. They are, and they're letting wildfire evacuees stay here. Like, the people that own the property, I'm sure, are very, very nice people, but they're so paranoid about the Rona that, like, the volunteers that are bringing us food, this happened to me this morning. There was a guy who was, I could see, wearing 2 pairs of latex gloves, had the surgical mask and the face shield, and he's handing me coffee. He like goes to reach and tries to hand me latex gloves so I can accept a cup of coffee. And I'm like, bro, that's not going to happen. I'm sorry. I'm going to take my coffee. Would you like some sugar? He starts to hand me a pack of like fake sugar. And I grab it. I realize it's fake sugar. I'm like, nah, dude, I don't. And he literally jumps back 4 feet like, oh my God, no, I can't touch it. I can't touch it. And I'm like, dude, how do you live like this?
I know.
You know, and I did. I mean, and my wife is in the room. She's like, stop, don't do it. Don't do it. You know, and I'm like, please just tell me how you live like this. How do you wake up every day in this much fear? And he's like, enjoy your coffee, and just bounced. You know, I mean,
I see that at the grocery stores, you know, where you come around and, you know, even it's not like we're, you know, it's important to say that for those out there trying to paint people who are skeptical as people who are also those that would confront or, you know, go up and just hug someone, because, you know, that's not the point. The point is that we're just trying to live our lives and with the ability to be skeptical about the claims. And so I'm just kind of walking in the store, and, you know, you have those conference, you know, where someone's coming around the corner and you happen to be right there. Happens all the time. But the point is, today you see these people recoil like you're talking about, some of them anyway, you know, and I had the exact same thought, you know, what are you I mean, look, caution is always a good thing in any sense of your life. And, you know, even when this all started, as aggressively skeptical as I am of anything the government is saying, I'm still going, okay, well, you know, I'm still going to be cautious. Who knows? Maybe they release something, you know? So I'm being cautious. You know, obviously I'm way past that now for my understanding of where we are. But the reality that you're going to leap back in fear as you're wearing the things that they're telling you supposedly keep you safe, just because the other person isn't. Like, that's the same faulty logic of vaccines and everything. You know, well, wait a minute, didn't you just say I'm, you know, and so on. But that has to show you this life that they're building for us. You know, this social engineering of being afraid of everything around the next corner, whether that's foreign policy, whether that's, you know, anything, mass shootings, terrorism, you know, it's all of these things that have all seemingly led to this same converging of agendas. You know, so it's a horrifying reality. And we have to see that. I mean, all the new articles coming out. Did you see the one from New York Post about your toilets wafting up coronavirus from which, by the way, is illogical if you understand how plumbing works, but whatever, you know, it's just incredible to me, but they're just trying to scare you, you know?
I mean, look, dude, I work in the building trades, you know, and I'll admit right now, I'm much more of a carpenter than a plumber. But the one thing that everyone in construction knows about water is that water goes down. That's what water does. It's what it wants to do. It wants to go down. The guy who taught me how to roof, grizzled, just gnarly, backwoods yet Burning Man freak. He goes, there's only 2 things you ever need to know about roofing. And the first one is that water goes down. The second one is that the shingles don't get no lighter. And like, I'm like, Jay, I'm pretty sure there's more than that. You know, no. Water goes down. That shit don't get lighter. Keep that in your head. You'll be all right. Yeah. But the idea that a virus, microns are going to rebel against the force of gravity and the force of moving water going down and away from you to waft up and get you ass sick or something. It's not just fear mongering, and it's not just cultural conditioning. Like, that's harmful content. Ryan.
Totally.
That's
Totally.
dangerous content, you know?
Think
And
about
yet,
go ahead.
no, I was just say it's supposed to be accepted as like gospel truth.
Yeah. And think about the kind of people that respond to your point about that. Like the kind of person that will attack their neighbor because they didn't do exactly what they were supposed to do. Like that's what that causes, you know, this irrational response. And to further elaborate on that, I mean, think it's the same. It's not, it's there's 2 points there. Why the idea that going against gravity is a very important one that I didn't even consider. But also think about the fact that we're supposed to be. Does anyone believe that the water that just went down something from your neighbor is getting anywhere near your water surfaces? Like, does that even make sense to you out there? Like, the fact is, we're having treated water. That's what comes out of your faucet. That's what goes in your toilet. That doesn't come from your neighbor's room. That comes from another location. The water coming out is going away. You know, so it just doesn't. They know that. Like, it's like you read the article and there's really no, it's an assumption. The same with the airplane one. It's like, okay, well, since they weren't sick because of our testing before they got on, and there's no other way anything could have happened because there's about 1,000 other ways it could have happened, we're going to assume that they were asymptomatic and that they got sick on the plane, even though they didn't test for symptoms afterward, which means they could have not been sick at all. You know, it's this weird blending of just this assumption. Same with the toilet. Because we know coronavirus is this, and this, which they're not, then we're just going to assume that it's because the toilet, and people gobble it up. You know, it's sick today. It really is. And this is, I don't know if you saw the parasite stress theory article on Last American Vagabond. That's a fascinating discussion.
But I will. And please, like, for the people who also didn't, who are watching right now, if we can rehash some of that, I'd like to go through that.
Yeah.
And I want to circle back to water at some point.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's just the idea is simply that pandemics create a perfect storm for creating authoritarianism and conformity in populations. There's been multiple studies that have found that. And the idea, the important part is it makes a clear statement that whether or not they're even real. The point being that a government could choose to fake something like this, knowing that it would drive people into conformity and authoritarian control. Right. I mean, isn't that exactly what we all see happening, you know, as well as the fact that the lockstep document in 2010 went along with the exact same concept, even to the point to where they recognized that people would resist and that they, of course, would have to force us back into place because freedom and democracy. Right. You know, it's like it's crazy. It is outrageous that people can't see what's happening and that they've documented it, discussed it. They're telling us what they're going to do and they're still saying it's not happening.
I had Helen Beniski on the show way back in like March because she was one of the very few people that had written about lockstep.
Great.
And yeah, it has one of my favorite lines in journalism now that I have kind of borrowed, and that is, this should raise a forest of red flags. That's just a great turn of phrase to me. And when you put her work on lockstep with Whitney's work from Dark Winter on, and a lot of the reporting that Vanessa Beeley has done on the ground in Syria, just to how coronavirus relates to U.S. occupation, U.S. militarization, the acquisition of natural resources that don't belong to them, it forms a much clearer picture, at least to me, that not only is this part of a plan, it's a live fire exercise. What we're living in right now is a live fire exercise that pushes us to this post-pandemic police state that Lockstep spoke of, that Event 201 spoke of, Crimson Contagion, Dark Winter, all of it. And you and I are being looked at as like an insurgent. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like an enemy combatant, because we're grown-ups who are questioning the legitimacy of a sociopathic state.
Yeah.
And the sociopathic state is being treated like some sort of benevolent grandfatherly figure, which I guess is why we only get candidates in their 70s with dementia.
Yeah, right? Yeah. Well, that's exactly what the study discusses too. The idea that it drives people to be more willing to look at authority as benevolent, or I forget the term they actually use in the article, but it's a similar term that, that we should bow to their authority and their opinions, regardless of anything else. And, facts and information, who cares? We should just listen to what we're told. And it says that is what this drives you to, as well as the fact that an interesting turn that the absence of those things tends to drive the other direction. So it's a clear correlation in multiple ways, that this is what, and so this is something that we have to admit that they know about, that we know that they do their research. This is something that they're well aware of. So whether or not this is an organic thing that they're just trying to fight back and save us all, and it just so happens to drive in that same direction, or they chose to make this happen to drive us to that position, or they chose to recognize an opportunity and drive us to that position. We can see all of those leading in the same direction. Does it, and this is what I keep asking people out there. If you know right now, let's just say if you knew that this was never going to go away, right? Despite all their claims and everything, if you knew right now that this was going to be the rest of your life, would you still be okay with it? Would you still be okay with the masks and the lockdowns and everything? Probably not, because nobody wants this to be forever. And that's why we're grasping to the just until we get a vaccine or put the, get over the hump or whatever they've been saying, And the point is that we have to see that they're telling us this is forever. That everything they're building is about a new normal. They're telling us that. So let's not be okay with it.
Yeah, I don't know how to advocate for that without being hauled off for inciting a riot, but I've been thinking about it a lot, and I have a friend who is kind of in the, I don't know, the spiritual skeptic community, but himself is like a solid Odinist. He calls himself Benjamin Balderson. That's his show name. Fascinating guy, and you might really enjoy a conversation with him. But I went to his new property when we had to evacuate. He just bought like 25 acres up on Murder Mountain in Humboldt County. And he's like teaching people how to live sustainably, because his theory is that the small pockets of resistance that are aware of what's going on, that even are linking it to things like Agenda 21 or 2030, we can't fight that. So because most of it is going to take place in large cities and they're largely going to abandon rural areas, let's start to form these self-reliant communities in rural areas. And now, here, let me show you how to do this. Let me show you how to find water. Let me show you how to build a structure and shit like that. Awesome. Which, and it is, and I love him for it. And I just, as soon as I called him and was like, hey, we got to evacuate, he was like, oh, well, cool, because I need some new stairs. Could you evacuate to my house and build me some stairs? And so for like 2 days, that's all I did was build bathhouses and stairs and shit. I do want to circle back to water real quick, because it's an issue that has now become one of the central focuses of my life because of being a wildfire evacuee. As far as I know, it's about the fire in our area is about a third of the way contained, and they're doing burn backs and they're starting to repopulate areas. But the town that I live in, our water infrastructure was so damaged that there is now a total benzene contamination of our water supply and our ground. God. So what that means is that the San Lorenzo Valley Water District has issued an order, a do not drink, do not boil, do not ingest order, which means not only can you not, obviously drink water, you can't bathe in it. You can't wash your clothes with it. You can't make a cup of tea with it. And they don't know how long it's going to take before they can sign off on decontamination or zero contamination.
Well, if there's any suggestion, it's going to take another 10 years or forever.
Well, they said prepare for a year.
God.
because that's how long it took for the Butte fire, the fire that tore through Paradise, California 2 years ago. Like the residents there, some of them, it took 18 months before they were able to make a cup of tea or bathe in their house with the water that came up through their pipes. Now what stops both a carceral state and a semi-totalitarian state like California itself from taking extreme advantage of this situation? You know, you've got an area that was famous for being self-reliant, for not following state orders, like Boulder Creek. Boulder Creek is in many ways still fairly like outlaw. You know, like we're one of the last pockets in and around Central California, certainly by Silicon Valley, where it's you know, I'm going to figure this out. I'm going to do this without help. I'm going to do this without assistance from a nanny state. You know, my neighbors are here for me, because when the power goes out or trees fall down and isolate the town for up to 2 weeks, like has happened since I've lived there, like giant redwoods fall across the road, take out all of the power infrastructure, and it's just you guys locked in this town. You got to learn how to get along. You got to learn how to help each other. Now that community may be getting crushed because of something like water.
Yeah.
And it is so, I'm fucking scrambling for a word here right now to describe like just how fucked this is, because they're going to let us back in about 3 weeks. And at that point, we're going to have to battle all sorts of insurance companies and government agencies and state agencies. And that's going to be like a second or third full-time job for people.
Right.
So it's going to take away from the rebuilding aspect and the communal togetherness that we would have helping each other rebuild the community. And they may ship people from outside the community in to do the rebuilding because we're all stuck navigating bureaucracy.
And I'd be willing to bet that rebuilding is going to be in the new technocratic way, you know, the new future, right? And it's an interesting point. I mean, the Emerald Triangle in general is a very anti-establishment. I've had a lot of friends that were in like the Redwood Red Bluff area, I believe it's called. Yeah. You know, yeah. I've lived in California. I grew up there for a long time. You know, so the point is that's always been something that's like a thorn in the side of, specifically, I would argue, the federal government, right? And it's just interesting that all of a sudden that gets a focus. You know, who knows? It could be organic, could just happen on its own. But yes, I would argue that they're very much going to take advantage of the situation. But the thing that bothers me is, as always, think about how much money is being taken from us. And you could not right now, you could actually make it two ways. You could argue about foreign policy, or you could argue about the COVID bailout that wasn't necessary. Trillions of dollars going to big business and other places, while right now you crumbling infrastructure, right? I mean, whether you're talking about due to fires or otherwise, or places like Flint that still right now don't have clean water. Why is that not a catastrophically ridiculous story? You know, still right now, I mean, it's absurd. That we point that our government will say, you know, look at Iran, look at Venezuela, look at them, look at how bad it is, and their crime. I mean, take Venezuela for a specific example, right? All they could do is look at even though they attack their power and attack everything and then point to it, they still say, look at the water, look at the power. Here we are in this country where we're dealing with the exact same problems, and we're not even getting the same kind of address. They'll address the problems in other countries before they even pretend ours are existing here. That needs to show us where their focus is. All the money. I mean, you could take 1 billion of that money, the trillions flowing away, and change the lives of most people, you know, and it's just sickening that our government doesn't see that, you know.
We are, since August of last year, the federal government has pumped, I believe it's slightly over $18 trillion that they printed, that they've just put into federal banks, Federal Reserve banks, that then go to you know, the faceless corporations and whatnot. And we, I mean, seriously, there's over $18 trillion that has just been manufactured out of whole cloth. Keystrokes are entered at the Federal Reserve, and then those numbers show up into different reserve banks, and boom, that's money. Now, to me, that's not money. You know, it's fiat currency. It's not tied to anything. It's not backed by anything. I know there's a lot of people who are zeitgeisters that are like, but the petrodollar doesn't exist. That's just a leveraging tactic that we used in the Middle East to make sure that oil is traded in US dollars. Right. But that's not what our economy is tied to. Our economy is a faith-based system. As far as I'm concerned,
debt these days, right? I mean, it's almost based on the manufacturing of debt from us and foreign countries. You know, I mean, it's a ridiculous situation where we can be in. And by the way, I want to say back, I said the government's not that they don't see it; it's that they see it and don't care. I said that incorrectly a moment ago, but yeah, it's just, the system is built in a way that they are siphoning wealth from us with every action they take. I mean, whether we're talking about taxes, which are stealing your wealth unjustly, or as you said, inflation, which is also stealing your wealth in a different way. They're lessening the value of your dollar with everything they print and give to people that they want to have it, right? I mean, if they're printing billions and trillions of dollars and you're only getting $20,000, $30,000 a year, think about how dumb that is, right? They're handing us money. Here's millions to you, that they can just make more and make sure that they're at the same status while you continue to lessen. Right, that's why we've got the 0.001% and the 99.999%. That's why that's happening. You know, it's frustrating.
I agree, and it's funny too, because when we attack countries like Venezuela for their lack of operational power grid, 9 times out of 10, it's because the CIA has destabilized their power grid.
Yeah,
exactly. And then we can turn around and go, but look, they can't even provide electricity to their citizens. Right. Well, right now, unless I go and find gas and put it in my generator, I can't provide power to my house. Not that they're letting me back in it, but that's the situation that we're going to face when we go back. Yeah. And were I not like slightly mechanically savvy, we'd be fucked, because when I got the generator, it wasn't operational. I had to take the whole thing apart. I had to clean the carburetor. I had to do all this. And, you know, like I had to put man hours into it in order to get it to work. And the only reason I know how to wrench on shit is because I'm poor. Right. You know, and that's pretty typical for Americans. Like, if you've got the money to take your car to a mechanic, that's what you're going to do if you're not mechanically inclined. And so there are, you know, even in my town, which, like I said, is pretty self-reliant, there in the last 10, 15 years, we've been invaded by Silicon Valley NPR liberals and NIMBYs and shit. And we're fighting back, but, you know, it's an uphill battle because they've got the resources. But holy fuck, are these guys clueless? Yeah. Like, you seriously have to explain to them, you know, which end of a hammer you strike a nail with, or like which end of the chainsaw to hold. And fucking, it's the way that we've established these I guess smart cities, smart communities, smart devices, smart homes. I've been in involuntary 5G since I got on the 101 to head down here. The Internet of Things, it's eroding self-reliance, and it's making people dependent not just on a state, but on technology. And the technology has been created to not just monitor you, but to change the way you think and to change the way you respond. Did you see Millie Weaver's documentary, Shadowgate?
I did. Yeah, I did. I definitely think that but I would argue that the documentary itself was very one-sided. Despite
absolutely.
It started, you know, it kind of gave lip service to the idea of the two-party system and both sides and blah, but then went in an aggressive way to say that Trump's innocent and, you know, it's the bad Democrats and then the bad Republicans, but Trump is still on the good side, you know, and it's like, But I thought there was there doesn't mean you shouldn't watch it. There's valid points in there in regard to the way this system works, but just remember that it's happening on both sides. That's what I would argue, but it was interesting.
Yeah, I feel like there were so many questions that they ignored, left unanswered, or walked away from just so they could paint Donald Trump in a sympathetic light. Exactly. And that's the biggest shame of the film to me. But
I also believe that the whole rest thing was not as legitimate as it was made out to be. There's a lot going on there that was shown later to be very much not what they sold it as. And whether it was happening naturally or not, it was definitely used to hype a documentary that I argue would have been, some views, but it wouldn't have got the attention that it got if that didn't happen. So
certainly
about that.
Certainly. But in that doc, what's her name? Tori is telling Millie Weaver, I could make you an asset and you wouldn't even know it. And Millie Weaver gets this like, oh shit look on her face. And she's like, is that happening right now? And the lady's like, no. Yeah, I'm just really fucking coy about it, but no. And the way that the shadow net works, where groups can be targeted to have their responses altered, to have their line of thinking altered, that drop down bar that they show in the film, where you can target individual people or like an organization's main social media account and manipulate the outcome of a situation, like for example Kyle Rittenhouse, and a 17-year-old kid whose mommy drove him across state lines so he could shoot him some protesters. Whether that's an organic event or not no longer matters now because of the way that people are being manipulated to feel one way or another about it.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Totally agree. I mean, and again, and that's the right way to look at this right now, because look, we could, dive into that conversation and it becomes very opinionated and very subjective, which most of them are because we don't actually know what happened. We're being told what happened, but that's the right way to look at it. But, argument aside, and that doesn't mean that discussion and what happened there is not important and relevant in its own way. But the discussion itself, as with the riots or protests or Black Lives Matter, the whole thing back and forth, it's ridiculously cartoonish, as you keep pointing out, that they make it, let's just take the protest example. It's either all peaceful protesters or all rioters. Well, no, there were rioters and there were protesters, right? And anyone honest can see that. And in this conversation here, it's gotten so ridiculously politicized now that this guy's either a shining beacon of heroics and freedom, or he's a terrorist. And neither of those things are actually exactly what happened, and that's what's so farcical about the whole thing, and that's what they keep doing. Is they make it this way so you become emotional, you become emotionally invested. And what I always say about that, think about how, we've all been in that position when we were younger, high school, whatever, where you have a significant other where you hear something and, you flip out. Oh my God, I can't believe that. And you maybe later find out that it was a rumor and it wasn't true. And I'm sorry, I overreacted. That's a good analogy for what happens. You lose your logic because you emotionally freak out. And that's what they do every damn day to us. They make you feel emotionally outraged. Remember, Bana in Syria, or the Lamar they put in the ambulance, though both of which were completely orchestrated. They do that so you go, oh my gosh, it's so sad this kid's struggling. And you don't think, wait a minute, where's his father? How did this happen? Where's the story? All the full breadth of the picture, which ends up showing you that they really didn't have this kid being hurt at all. They took him and they painted him up and they put him in the ambulance, and so on. And it's just so it's overwhelmingly obvious. We just need to pull away from the political sides of it all,
And that's, that's the fight. That's the struggle. We intentionally tell people that Action for Assange is a post-partisan organization, and that we don't feel or believe that we can have an honest conversation about things like policy or things like politics unless we've got unspun primary source documents that we can then read and digest without being told how to think or feel about it. Mm-hmm. And that's a giant hurdle for so many people to get over, where the only reason they're responding in the first place is because they're emotionally attached to the political nature of it, to the politicized.
Their identities are wrapped up in what that is completely, right? They identify with who they are about whether or not they're on one side or the other. How do you break away from that? Like, that's difficult.
Well, and I think you and I have had this conversation, but it's in an increasingly secular society, the same energy that you would put into being a person of faith has been transferred into your political identity.
Yeah.
And so now your political identity is wrapped up as a belief system. And at least in the United States, it is absolutely a supernatural belief system. And you respond to things, especially information that runs counter to your belief system, the way that a hardcore evangelist or Muslim or whatever, hardcore person of faith would, and that's to recoil and to surround yourself with like-minded people so that you can have that your identity and your ideology reinforced by those people. And that's where we are in independent media too. Like the channels that used to get fucked with because they were pro Bernie or exposing the blatant crimes of the Democratic Party, they're not getting fucked with anymore. They've been largely left alone because their content is an emotional response to a situation that probably wasn't originally political in nature, but made political in nature in order to generate a desired outcome.
Yeah, it's an interesting. I for a long time been since 2016 for the most part been making it very clear that this is. It went from you're on the other side, left versus right, having a political discussion, to now, well, you're on that side, so you're evil. Right, you're the enemy, and it's like, wait a minute, like, how is that even? We're all in the same country, aren't we? Isn't he the president of everybody, not just one party? Like, how did that even happen? And you hit it right on the head. I mean, it's become not just that you disagree, but that's now blasphemy, right? You are now challenging the core foundation, and it's not what that really is. You just have a different political opinion. But if you can convince them that somebody who has a different political opinion is like counter to American beliefs, well, then you create exactly what we have now. And you're right, it's not logic. You're like, if you go up to somebody and you say, I don't believe God exists, and they're going to be like, that's horrible. And that's the exact response we're getting, and that shouldn't be the same response when we're talking about political, ideologues, people that get elected and come and go. And it's like, it's crazy. And I say that often as kind of a response, but this is, I think, actually crazy. Like, we're like a schizophrenic kind of point here where people are just, it's kind of alarming. I mean, again, how do you actually deal with that? Like, we need like our own social engineers to like go, it's like, but I don't want that, it's crazy.
I've thought for a very long time now that at least in the West, we are, I guess, pushed into a sort of schizophrenia where you're born and you're a kid, and as a kid, from the moment you can hear and respond, you are told that you have to be a different person in public than who you are at home, that you behave a certain way around adults, you behave a certain way around your peers, you behave a certain way around your parents, and you're almost forced to develop multiple personalities. And I don't know if I've even talked about this on the show before or not. This is just something that's been kicking around in my head for a long time. But that forced multiple personality disorder, or that forced schizophrenia, manifests in your teenage years, and that's when you see like a 17-year-old kid thinking that, potentially thinking that like his president, his political party, or his police force wants him to go hunt human beings. Or you see protesters who are like, okay, well, I know that this business has a Black Lives Matter sign in front of it, but I'm going to burn shit down anyway because they're an example of capitalism or whatever the fuck it is.
Right.
And that's a rational human being doesn't think in those terms. A person who has not been psychologically manipulated or programmed doesn't think in those terms. You know, like I see somebody's stuff and that's their stuff. It's not my stuff. So I don't go and fuck with it because it's not mine. You know, like I have a little bit of respect in me for people's personal property.
Think about the inherent contradiction, the inherent hypocrisy in claiming that you're trying to stop a concept that judges people based on characteristics without even knowing who they are, and then going out and burning down in a business that of a person which you've never met before because you claim they're a certain person even though you've never met them before. Like this entire thing is literally inherently contradictory. I mean, the same idea of people screaming about free speech while shutting down free speech. You know, this is, again, it all ties back to the same kind of schizophrenic set. This is the political sphere we're in. And that is driving people to take violent, irrational action. I even saw, and this shouldn't necessarily represent everyone in that discussion, Q or whatever else, but I saw one of the people actually defending this online saying that the guy the guy that came after him was a pedophile that's trying to come after him, and so he shot him. And it's like, what? Like, maybe, but what the hell? How can we just make these claims? You know, it's so irrational. And to your point about the come from when you're a kid, I find that so interesting to think about. You're so right that we're trained to respond like a dog in a certain position. You know, even not just being who you are, and but you have to act this way here and this way there. Reminds me of a kind of funny joke that somebody said when I was a kid that. When you're a child, you're told to sit down, shut up, be quiet, don't talk, blah, blah. But then the moment you get a certain age, you're told to stand up, get out, go speak up, do this. And it's weird how it's like, wait a minute, didn't you just train me to be quiet and do what I'm told? And now suddenly I'm, and it's just, that's what we're trained to respond to authority. We're trained to react to what we're told to do. And that's not the way that life should be. I think any genuine person who's speaking about a free society would recognize that that's not accurate. And that doesn't mean all parents are like that. I feel like my parents are people that I know, or I think I'm the way I am because of them. You know what I mean? And that's what we're trying to spread with what we do, I think.
I agree with that 100%. And I am a parent, and like there's an inherent hypocrisy in being a parent. You especially me, because of the kid that I was. But the kid that I was, I'm not necessarily proud of. Like I did some raw ass shit when I was a kid. And I would like to see my children not have to go through the consequences that I suffered because of my actions. Mm-hmm. So when I try to talk them out of something, it feels hypocritical. But and I'm sure it is, but it's like, fuck, dude, you don't have to do it the hard way every time. You don't. You can listen to people who are basing their statements on experience rather than letting anyone from like Jimmy Dore to Ben Shapiro tell you how to feel about something. Yeah. Like I hope in this show I'm not that guy that says you should feel this way about this thing.
Right. Yeah. Well, and you're not, though, Steve. And that's the point. We're definitely here saying, think for yourself, but here are my opinions, and it's an interesting thing to think about, coming from when you're a kid. And I mean, it's an interesting thought experiment, right? I mean, what's better? We don't know. We're all basing it on our subjective, experiences, but what's better? Is it better to look, for instance, and I'm sure you could have a similar experience, the mistakes that I made, which were terrible mistakes in my life, which we could probably all talk about our mistakes in our lives, have led me to be who I am. And that's not always how it works out. A lot of people break when they have those kind of things and become a worse person, but that's the measure of who you are, the way you respond to the mistakes you make, the way you pick yourself back up and keep going, And so what's better? Is it better to be told not to do things and then go into your life and make different choices? Maybe because I have had similar experiences with my parents where they told me what they went through. And I think it colored where I went. But, I don't have an answer to it. It's interesting. It's kind of hard. You just have to do what you think is right. But I would argue, I'm willing to bet that you're a person that's not saying this is what you have to do, unless it's obviously necessary as some, terrible thing your kid will do. But that you're saying, here's what you should be doing. I hope you're going to make the right choice. You know what I mean? And that's what it ultimately comes down to, is it's guidance as opposed to mandates, which again perfectly ties in with where we are today in our country. It's both ways.
my dad told me that he said the only thing I can do for you as a parent is give you roots and wings, and that's it. You know, I can show you where you came from. I can show you what a measure of stability looks like, and I can let you go off and make your own decisions. And you're going to have these roots to draw on, you know, as a foundation. But because you have wings, it's up to you where you fly.
I like that. I like that. There's another one that I've heard that I thought was interesting is about like it's a bow and arrow analogy, right? And because that's ultimately what it comes down to is, you know, all you can ultimately do is, you know, notch it up right, aim as best you can, and eventually you just have to let it go and hope that you guided it, you know, the right direction. The alternative would be a parent that would instead take the arrow and go put it where they want it to be, right? And that's very different, right? But both of them are met with guidance and leaders, you know, and it's the whole same thing. But, you know, it's interesting. It's a very weird place we're in to realize that even our parents, unwittingly so, are part of this propaganda network, or not just parents, but anybody, any individual that doesn't realize you're taking part in the control structure is a problem. But not that it should be dealt with anger and attacks, but, you know, those are the very people we reach with what we're doing or trying to, right? Waking them up to the reality.
Yeah. And for that, you know, we're well and good battered for it, to the point to where, you know, you're impersonating yourself, or I'm producing harmful content because I have a conversation with Vanessa Beeley about what's going on in Syria, or, you know, like Whitney comes on. It's funny, dude, when as soon as you enter the title and put Whitney Webb's name in your title, like, that demonetization comes immediately. Like, she's a flagged name in YouTube's algorithm.
For sure. Well, think about the stuff that she's writing about. You know, I mean, think about the kind of people that she's calling out. I mean, I don't personally see that anywhere else, right? I mean, anywhere. So we have to pretty much assume that she is some, you know, as well as all of us are on some kind of a list. You know, they're the problem. Like we're on the continuity of government list that they talked about, right? With, you know, the idea that they're going to the people that will be rounded up if and when they feel that their government is in risk. That's a real thing from the administration, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to go ahead and wrap for the day, because I have a crap ton of stuff I've got to sort out. What is there anything that you would like to make perfectly clear about what's happening to The Last American Vagabond? Is there anything that you need help with that I can try and get out there for you? Because it's one of those situations where, regardless of how, you know, we may align on every single issue, that doesn't fucking matter. What happens is that, or what matters is that because there are so few of us, we have to band together in this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I would say that the one thing over anything else that I want people to know is that I'm pretty damn certain that it's only a matter of time until YouTube kicks us off the platform. So one, go and subscribe to our backup channel on YouTube. More importantly, subscribe to all of the other platforms that we also stream to and also post to. Most importantly, subscribe directly to the website. But the point over all of it is that I won't stop what I'm doing. I'm going to keep doing this no matter. It's irrelevant whether YouTube decides to allow me to post on their platform or not. I'm going to keep doing what I'm going to keep doing, right? And the point is that needs to show you what's happening here, because it's clear that what we're doing is not saying think this, think that. We're saying here's things for you to consider, and along with my opinion about it, right? That there's no way that we can argue that that's censorable today, but it is happening. So I just ask that people continue to seek out this kind of information, continue watching Slow News Day, continue fighting for these things, because we are all going to be forced off this. Maybe before 2020, maybe afterward, but we can all see that it's happening. So take a stand and support the people that you believe in, and not just one, two, but as many as you can find that you feel are accurate or intelligent or genuinely seeking things out. You know, vote with your dollar. I mean, if we want more example about how that actually works, look at the mask situation, right? I mean, oh, we're going to mask, we're going to enforce, and everyone's going to go jail. Suddenly, all of a sudden, bottom lines are being hurt, and Walmart and everybody else goes, whoa, wait a minute, we're no longer going to enforce that. Why do you think they did that? They did it because money was hurting them, and they immediately realized they can't just cut off 30% of their people coming in to buy things. So vote with your dollar. Show them that you are not someone to be messed with. And thank you for having me on, Steve.
Hell yeah. I really enjoyed these conversations, Ryan. I do. You're one of my favorite guests. I think we get to delve into avenues of conversation that I certainly don't ordinarily do on the show, and I hope that you feel the same way about that.
Very much so.
Guys, if you're not subscribed to The Last American Vagabond, there's something wrong with you, and you should get that looked at. I may be back this evening from Apple Pie Ridge in beautiful Big Sur, California. I'm going to visit a very dear friend, and if he has reception, we're going to live stream that conversation, because holy crap, is this dude wild. It'll be the first time that I go to Big Sur not being a drunk. It's been a little bit more than 4 years, so it's gonna feel weird.
Oh, I see. That's awesome.
Going to Nepente, which is a pretty famous restaurant and bar there. I would always go and hang out on Henry Miller's bar stool, because there's a sign that says this was Henry Miller's bar stool. If you're not familiar with that author, writer, he had some really interesting shit to say. But yeah, I did. Thank you, Ryan. Thank you to Sleepy Josh on the ones and twos here. Thanks to everyone in the chat. Rob Juno, I appreciate the super chat. I love you, brother. Hopefully I'll be back today. If not, I'll see you Tuesday for the Assange Vigil, and then Thursday I fly out to DC, and I'll be in DC for 2 weeks, holding actions and events during the show trial of Julian Assange. During that time, I do have Whitney scheduled as a Slow News Day guest. There will be a fuck ton of content every day, and hopefully we can generate enough noise to at least seriously concern a violent and inverted totalitarian state. That's gonna do it. This is Slow News Day. I'm Steve Poikonen. Good luck to us all.